I just did it again. I clapped at the beginning of the show, which I'm not supposed to do. Hello, folks. Welcome to another show, another special edition of Social Media News Live. I am here with my good friend Shannon Hernandez and Connor Brown. This is going to be a fun show because we're talking, it's kind of, I guess, controversial. A lot of podcasters, you know, is it on YouTube? Is it a podcast? I go to Dave Jackson's Saturday morning live show, and this comes up frequently. So I'm interested to get Shannon's, who has been in podcasting since I've known him. In fact, little known fact, I called Shannon. We went to Podcast Movement for the first time I spoke there. I think you and I were speaking at the same time. That was like my first big speaking thing, and you were there. And he helped me get set up when I did the Manly Pinterest Tips podcast, the first one I ever did. And he helped me get set up with my mic, helped me sound good. So and if also Shannon and I worked together on Guy Kawasaki's Remarkable People podcast. So he's been around, folks. And that's why we have gray hair, because we work together.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, so this is going to be a fun one. So make sure you ask your questions. We're talking about if you're a new podcaster, if you're, you've been around for a while and you're like, I'm not on YouTube. Should I be on YouTube? This is a big question. So ask your questions and we'll try to bring that up today during the show. Connor Brown, how are things in the sunny state of Florida?
They are bright and sunny. Jeff knows this, but this week I got to do something pretty cool. Universal, one of the theme parks here, they have a big Mardi Gras festival. They have a daily Mardi Gras parade, and I got to be on one of the floats tossing out beads to all the park guests on Monday. It was a ton of fun, and I only had to tell one large gentleman to put his shirt back on, and I would just still talk.
Are you serious? Was that real? I thought you were joking. Was that real?
No, that was real. I said, sir, I'll throw you a bead, but put your shirt down. He said, you got it. No one wants to see that.
Oh my God.
My next question was going to be like, was there a Girls Gone Wild moment there? But you answered it for me. So
that's hilarious. All right. We got some Shannon's friends showing up saying good morning, Shannon Hernandez.
Hello, Bobby.
Says hello. So I want to make sure we are live on our channels because I don't see our comments, but we'll just keep going. But we're going to go ahead and hit go on the podcasting machine, and we'll get started. You ready, Connor?
Let's do it.
Oh God! I thought we were already live. So.
No, yeah, we're live, but this is like the recording. So
yeah, exactly.
Here we go. All right, here we go. Hello, folks. Welcome to Social Media News Live. I'm Jeff C., and you're not.
And I'm Connor Brown, and this is the show that keeps you up to date on what's happening in the world of social media and more.
You ever wondered what it takes to grow a podcast that reaches the right audience and keeps them coming back for more? Maybe you're looking for ways to make your podcast stand out in a crowded space. Or maybe you're thinking about taking your show to YouTube, but aren't sure if that's the right move or not. If any of those sound familiar, then you are in the right place, because this week we're sitting down with someone who knows the ins and outs of podcasting success. Shannon Hernandez has spent over 2 decades in radio and now helps podcasters create, grow, and monetize their shows. He'll be sharing his journey, his best strategies, and the biggest mistakes to avoid. So sit back, clear your schedule, clear your mind, and get ready for this week's episode of Social Media News Live. Shannon, how you doing today, my friend?
Good. Thank you for having me on the show today, Jeff. And it's good to see you, Connor. I was commenting before we went live that I like your hair.
I know my luscious flow is coming in, and it's grown quite a bit since the last time we had Shannon on the show, but we're so happy to have him back. If you don't know who Shannon is, you should. He is a radio personality, podcasting expert, and business growth strategist. He's been a staple at 98 KUPD as an on-air personality for over 26 years, with 20 of those years as a full-time host. Shannon is passionate about helping businesses thrive in the digital space, and he's built trainings and products designed to help small business owners launch and grow their podcasts with ease. He's also the host of The Podcast Therapist and an editor for the Remarkable People podcast. With his deep knowledge of audio and business, he's here to share insights on making your podcast stand out. So Shannon, welcome back to the show.
Thank you again, Connor. I appreciate it very much. And I'm looking forward to talking to people about today's topic.
You sound so impressive. It's amazing, Shannon. So, I mean, I keep forgetting you were a teacher and that you've been radio personality for so long, but it's very, very cool. Thank you for being here today.
Not a problem.
One of the things that makes this show happen is our friends over at Ecamm. You can find out more about them at ecamm.com/Jeff. There, a lot of podcasters use it. A lot of people use it for like what we're doing with the live show. You can find out more by going to ecamm.com/Jeff. Use code Jeff15 to save 15% on your first purchase. That's ECAMM. And I'm gonna pull a Dave Jackson here because he's in the audience. It's 2 M's because it's good. We also have to be in the our best behavior because he is here going, hey, the Shan man. I go and watch Dave's show every Saturday that he does at 9:30 my time. So I have to be on my best behavior.
Dave's a legend, man. Dave's a legend.
He's like in the podcast Hall of Fame, along with our friend Lou Mangello and all that. So we're going to go ahead and get started because this is kind of a interesting topic. This shifting to YouTube podcasts. I was just at Podfest not very long ago. This was a big subject, a lot of tracks about video podcasting. So on your YouTube channel, you've been talking a lot about YouTube podcasts lately. So what sparked your shift towards focusing on YouTube as a platform for podcasters?
Well, I think it really started back in, I guess, a fall of 2024. I really wanted to jump back onto my YouTube channel and start helping people, helping podcasters, and not just helping podcasters with the startup of a podcast, but helping them with the marketing aspect of their podcast. And so at the time, I was rebuilding a few things back on my website, and I was getting back into the social media game, not necessarily so much on Facebook, but really tapping into Threads, LinkedIn, all that. And so all of this kind of came together. And I thought, well, I'm going to just start releasing an audio podcast, and we'll get it out there, and we'll start publishing it out there so that people can start, consuming it once again. I've already got an email list. I can, push that out there, let them know that I'm back and that I plan on being here for a while. And so trying to get back into the consistency game was a bit of a challenge for me, right? But it was right around that time when I started reading a lot more about YouTube podcasts. And it's already been around for quite some time. I mean, you would say that guys like Joe Rogan had already been had popularized it. Their move from YouTube to Spotify, and just popularizing how podcasts are consumed. And I had known that this was already a trend in the space as it is, because I had coworkers that's how they listen to podcasts. They listen to them specifically and strictly on YouTube. And the reasons behind that was that they could click over to the video portion and see the reactions of what was going on the podcast itself. And I just thought that was a really fascinating take on YouTube podcasts, is that you could listen to it, but if you wanted to switch over, you could actually see the reactions of someone on the screen. And so that really has fascinated me probably for the last couple of years. And so by the time last fall, or the fall of 2024 had rolled around, I thought, I really need to investigate, at least for myself, what this is all about. I had already imported my podcast, the Podcast Therapist, up onto YouTube as it was, and I was getting ready to publish podcasts, and I was publishing some publishing podcasts here and there, just to kind of get a taste of like how this is going to work, how it's going to tie in from my own hosting platform over into YouTube. And so then I thought, I really need to just start doing this. I need to start going in and publishing YouTube to my RSS feed so that I can go to YouTube. And then it was around that time back in November that I had gotten an email from YouTube themselves, and they had said, we're going to be doing a live feed, a live stream, and we are going to be talking specifically and strictly about YouTube podcasts. And I thought, here's my chance. This is my chance to learn from the global head of, YouTube and podcasts, and I can hear exactly what they are looking for in terms of what it takes to put a podcast up on YouTube. And just as some context, I was, back in 2021, 2022, and I'd already been publishing to my YouTube channel. So I was publishing videos already to YouTube. So I already knew what it took to publish to YouTube as it was. So how different was that to publishing a regular video versus a podcast? And that's what I was really fascinated about. And that's why I wanted to jump into it. And there was a lot in that seminar, or that I guess it was a webinar
Mm-hmm.
that I learned. I mean, I learned so much in there, and there's just so many different takes on YouTube podcasts and how you do it and how you publish it. And there's all the statistics that come out about like, hey, Apple Podcasts is the top podcasting platform to where you can consume podcasts, and then you get Pod News that comes back and says YouTube Podcasts is the top platform. And where is that? Which information is correct? And you have to take a lot of the data that you are getting from podcast outlets, news outlets, wherever they're coming from. You have to take it kind of with a grain of salt and understand really your audience. And that's where I come in. That's where I want to come in, and I want to help podcasters with marketing their podcast. And so YouTube podcasts, to me, seems like a great opportunity for podcasters to really make promotional efforts towards their podcast if they are following, I would say, a strategic format or a strategic order in order to publish their podcast, but to leverage the platform for their back end. In other words, leveraging YouTube podcasts and already what they're doing with their audio podcasts and leveraging it on the back end of their website or newsletter or whatever that may be. So that's really kind of where it all started for me.
Gotcha.
I think as we're going to talk a lot about, YouTube podcasts in particular, we can kind of take a step back. And James asks a great question where he says, I'm in Spotify and Apple, but isn't YouTube already a podcast? I upload my episodes on YouTube automatically. Is that the same thing? So Shannon, can you kind of break down, what is an actual YouTube podcast? Because I know we can just also add the RSS feed and it'll pull in, but there's a couple of different ways we can kind of go about it, right?
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple different ways. So if you're creating a YouTube podcast, there's a couple different ways we look at this, right? So let's say you have a hosting platform and you're publishing already audio podcasts. Well, you can go into YouTube, and YouTube gives you the ability to go into your YouTube studio and set up an actual dedicated podcast, right? So it's a podcast itself, and it can be, if I can put air quotes around things, can be audio, but it's all set up in YouTube Studio, right? You have to go through the all the steps that it'll take to set it up as a YouTube podcast. The RSS feed is being pulled into YouTube, and then as you publish to your hosting provider, that audio podcast is uploaded directly into YouTube as just a slate card. It's just a thumbnail is all it is. And it's going to be a thumbnail of your podcast show art. That's all it's going to be. So that's one way that YouTube says that you can go ahead and publish to YouTube podcasts. The other way is that you are actually natively uploading video or some form of video into YouTube that could be like a podcast where it's like this. We're talking on the screen. You can see guests, you can see hosts, you can see just about anything going on. There's still an audio element to it, but it is not distributed to an RSS feed. It's distributed onto YouTube's platform. So when we're talking about the different types of podcasts, YouTube says, yes, you can pull an RSS feed in onto YouTube podcasts, but it's actually better to natively upload into YouTube because it leverages the platform a lot better. So if you're pulling in from a third party, like an RSS, yeah, that's cool. You can still do it. It'll work. And it does work. I've seen podcasts where it's just strictly audio and it's just an RSS feed that is pulled in. But they say if you want to really take advantage of the leverage of the tools that YouTube has, creating something that has video where there's actual elements of figures on the screen speaking are better. Now, they will also say that, and we might get into this a little bit later, they say maybe you're camera shy and you might get a little camera shy. You don't necessarily have to be on the camera. What you can have is something that is natively uploaded into YouTube and something that is like it has captions, like the moving captions that go across the screen. Something has to move on the screen. So you can do that, but it must be natively uploaded into YouTube. And I might add, and I forgot, that when you're setting this up in YouTube and you upload a podcast into YouTube, there is a dedicated playlist. So they say podcasts are playlists. So podcasts are playlists. So you must create a playlist, and when you set up your podcast, it'll ask you if this is a podcast itself, and then you go, yeah, it is, and then it'll create a playlist for that, and that's how you start uploading. And you assign that video to a playlist, and it creates it as a playlist. These podcasts are then distributed onto the YouTube Music platform and onto YouTube. So the distribution gets into the ecosystem of YouTube itself, whether that be YouTube Music or YouTube platform itself. And then the algorithm, depending on how you are setting up those podcasts in terms of the metadata, that is going to determine how the algorithm is going to take charge of that and put it and distribute it out to people who it thinks most likely will consume that content.
Gotcha. So playlists are important once you upload it. Mm-hmm. Uploading natively is what you have found to be the best. I mean, mm-hmm. Instead of just pulling it from an RSS feed, I'm pretty sure that's what I've heard a lot of podcasters do. So that's all good thing, but you have to tag it with that playlist or it's not a podcast, correct?
Right. It would just be a regular video. Now it can still be a video. Let's say it's still a video itself. Mm-hmm. You can create another YouTube playlist. But if you want it to be a podcast that is distributed into the YouTube Music platform, make sure it's a playlist for that podcast. And then you can have another playlist where it's like helpful videos or videos on, best beard, grooming techniques. And it could still be something like that if you see what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm going to nerd out real quick, Connor. I'm sorry. I gotta go down this rabbit trail. So, a lot of times, discovery is hard for podcasts. This, I think, helps with that. I think I'm 100. I couldn't find the quote, but I'm 100% sure that I think Tom Webster said this is where most people are finding new podcasts is from YouTube, and I'm pretty sure that's what he said. If I'm wrong, tell me in the comments. But so discovery is important on YouTube, but at the end of a YouTube video, a lot of times people put on those title cards.
Right?
Is it important when you have that playlist for your YouTube podcast is to have that title card go to the next one in your playlist for podcast and not taking them off of the list to another one of your videos per se, or have them suggest what you want? Kind of best practices. Would you have it go to the next one in sequence? Or if I'm doing a series about podcasting on this show, it should list to another podcast episode about podcasting on the playlist. Is that what I'm hearing you need to do as well?
Yeah, there's a couple different philosophies and way you can look at this, because really it's all about driving traffic to the things that you want, right? And mm-hmm. Jeff, you know me long enough to where you know that I'm about traffic. I'm about driving traffic through email, all these things. And so at the end of the YouTube video, you're typically going to have about 15 seconds to go ahead and do your final pitch that, for people to say, hey, I want you to go ahead and check out this next video that really is going to help you out with I don't know, maybe, help you out with your objectives for your podcast. I've done this podcast, and, I'm always trying to push people to that. If I were to take a step back and say, ask the question, what is the thing that a lot of podcasters are really focused on? Well, they like to focus on downloads. And I think that's still kind of a thing. They love to get their downloads, and downloads they're important, right? Because that's visibility to their podcast. And so you have to identify anything that goes onto YouTube, kind of air quote download, right? Mm-hmm. But you're just driving someone to another video. So you're creating a call to action for them to consume a new piece of content that is going to be on your channel. Why would you want to give traffic to someone else's video when you're trying to drive traffic to your own video? And that's just the logics behind it. So you can create a quadrant on the end screen for YouTube. And so the quadrant can be just a video of your face. It could be this video in the top left-hand corner, and then below that can be a subscribe button. You can set it up in the back end.
Right.
You want to set up a subscribe button. Then of course I put in the top right-hand corner on my videos the next video, and the next video is typically going to be the previous video that I want them to watch. Or if I have covered a topic, or I'm talking about a specific topic, or mentioned something about a previous episode in the topic, and I really want to drive home the case that hey, if you're trying to promote your podcast through social media, what is your objective? This is a big question, and I'll say this right now, even in this this recording, is that you have to understand what your objective is. And so I'll always tell people what's your objective? Hey, I've got a video at the end of this particular podcast or this YouTube video. Make sure you click on it. It talks all about objectives. I highly recommend that you check out that particular video, because that is really going to be the catalyst for the success of the downloads or views of your podcast. So in that quadrant will be my face, it'll be a subscribe button, it'll be a video going next, to the next video. Right. And then below that, I typically have a link that will go directly to an opt-in for something. So, hey, if you're starting a podcast, check out my essential equipment guide, and that will take them to the essential equipment guide. So I have a quadrant of 4 calls to action to allow them to take an action on something. All right. Mm-hmm. And so that subscribe button is real easy, right? It's on the screen. You can hit subscribe, or you can hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and it'll allow you to just go ahead and subscribe immediately. But then you'll have 2 other options, which will be either go to the next video or to go to the opt-in, either way. But this is really more about optimization and giving yourself the competitive edge on leveraging the platform so that you can start generating traffic to either your videos or to your email newsletter list or your website.
Got it.
Jeff, we're getting a lot of good questions. I want to ask one from Rich Graham, kind of turn it into a question. He says lots of YouTube podcasters are sleeping on clips, not shorts, but 5 to 10 minute hyper specific SEO worthy snippets. Shannon, my question to you is, the bigger players, we see a lot of the times they'll have 2 channels, right? One channel will just be long form podcast episodes. And then the second channel will be a clips channel where they take those long form podcasts and they cut them up into 5 and 10 minute segments like Rich is talking about and post it to that second channel. What's your thought on keeping those separate versus just putting them all on one dedicated YouTube channel with long form and then also clips posted?
So I would say that there's 2 different philosophies that go behind this. Now you have big players that are doing this. I've seen it all over the place, and they have 2 channels to do this to promote their other channels. I've heard anything from, hey, it's because YouTube limits my visibility based on whatever. And while others say no, I just keep the clips on one channel. And, I would say you have to do what works best for you. However, I will also say this, that when I attended the YouTube webinar back in, November, December or something like that, and I went back and rewatched the replay, YouTube says that it is, if you're going to do that, it is better to just have those clips on one channel, and specifically for the reasons that if they have enabled the subscribe bell on your YouTube channel, it will always notify them it'll always notify the viewer that there is a new video that is available for that channel. If they're creating a separate channel, there is, I don't know if they said this, but I can assume that there is a likelier chance that they have not hit that bell for that secondary channel. So you're creating more steps in the process of promoting the podcast or promoting what you have in order to get people back to listening to your own content. Doesn't mean that it's wrong or that it's right. It just means that you have to do what works best for you. But what I would say is that if you're to leverage all of the tools inside of YouTube, you have to leverage the metadata, you have to leverage the titles, you have to leverage the thumbnails, you have to leverage where you're putting the links, the comments, everything, pushing back to your ultimate objective. That's going to be the thing that I'm going to always talk about. What is your objective? If your objective is just to get views and you have an extra channel and you want to push it back to your YouTube channel, fine, maybe that's your objective. But maybe your objective is that you're creating a business around all of this. And not only do you have monetization opportunities that are available for a channel that you can sell products, merchandise, services, whatever it may be, but what is the other objective? Maybe the objective is on the back end, right? It's on your website. And I know that you talk about this a lot on your show, Jeff, is that, we always talk about how, you can build content on platforms, but is it a good idea to have all of your content on that platform and monetize on that platform? And, you and I have been in this game long enough to know that when, when Instagram goes down, the world turns upside down, freaks out, and everyone's like, oh my God, right? And so who's to say that anything like that could happen to YouTube? YouTube has, historically been a pretty reliable platform. But what if that one day your YouTube channel gets banned. And we talk about those types of things. You hear about it on YouTube channels. They say my YouTube channel got demonetized for this reason. You don't want to fall into those traps where you get demonetized and you have no income coming in. That's how you're relying on your income. So I know we kind of went off track right there.
No,
but
that's good.
To talk about the clips, that's what I would recommend, is that you got to do what's best for you, but you have to understand your objective.
That's a great point. That's a great point. There's some great questions and comments we're having inside of the chat. So thank you guys for doing that. Ask your questions away. Chris Stone has this great point. He's watching over on YouTube. He says, content diversity is important on video, serves up your content to different people with different attention spans. And also Doc Rott, some people were talking about, don't forget about Spotify. Spotify has 675 million users. Yeah. YouTube is 2.9 billion, but people need to stop sleeping on Spotify because, there's discovery that's starting to happen more and more there. This is a great question from but mostly Disney. Says, so I do my podcast live on YouTube, and then I edit it and upload it to Spotify. The podcast on YouTube Music is an audio version of the raw show, but for the audio, I'd like it to be the more polished one. Is there an easy way for him to do that, Shannon?
Let me reread that question.
Yeah.
So I do my podcast live on YouTube, then edit it and upload it to Spotify. Oh, can you bring that comment back up so that I can read it?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. The podcast on YouTube Music is an audio version. Oh, okay, I got you. But the audio I'd like to be more polished. So the way that I polish audio, and I hope this answers the question, and maybe you can help me with this, Jeff, because this is, I think, how you do it as well, is that I've got a Rodecaster Pro 2 here. That's how I have polished audio. So I can record through Ecamm. Nice plug for Ecamm. Go get Jeff's Ecamm right now. But that's how I'm typically doing it. I'm recording my video on Ecamm. And shout out to Doc Rock on that as well. So I record it all on Ecamm, but I record the audio version on a Rodecaster Pro 2. And that's how I'm doing it. I'm using the function there. And so that is how I get more polished audio for myself to publish to my RSS feed or whatever. I like to do it that way. I'm kind of a little bit of an audio nerd, just because a lot of the elements that are in my podcast, at least the sound elements, they are recorded and they are mixed into stereo. And so when you listen to it, you listen to the Podcast Therapist on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can hear that it is actually in stereo. You can hear things panning from one ear to the next, and you can hear that. If I recorded it on Ecamm, I don't believe that it is recorded in stereo. It's in mono, and of course, it is high quality, but it's more in mono. I've replaced the audio from my Rodecaster Pro 2, and that's how I've done that. So that's just kind of how I create and clean up audio if I'm just doing an audio podcast. So I have a couple of different systems. I know that it isn't always ideal, or it's perfect for people to go ahead and create or buy a Rodecaster Pro 2. But I always try to tell people, hey, if you're gonna get into something like a Rodecaster Pro 2 or maybe even a Rodecaster Duo, utilize the Duo. It'll do the same exact thing. If you're not looking for having many inputs, you don't have many guests, anything like that. But, I'm an audio dork, so it's, more than likely the average person is not going to do what I do.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can add more to that, Jeff.
Yeah. I want to add something to it. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here. But so Sean, for but mostly Disney, one thing you can do if you're not already doing this is once your live ends, which is your podcast, go into your YouTube channel backend and then flag that video and add it to your podcast playlist. And then it will automatically become that playlist. Yep, you're going to have the ums and the ahs that you do with a live show, but it's going to show up as a video podcast. And even on the audio, music, YouTube music format, it's just going to be the audio anyway. Yeah. It won't be as clean, but I think it's going to help with all that. Go ahead, Shannon.
And that's a good point, Connor. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
I was just going to say I wanted to get you, but the one thing I would say is, Connor, you can actually set that up to go beforehand. So what I do is I schedule the show, then I go into my YouTube settings and I go ahead and edit that to add it to the podcast. So I don't have to go back later and do it. It's already in the podcast feed. So when it goes live, it goes automatically and dumps it in there. So go ahead, Shannon. Sorry.
Yeah. And so that's a great point too, Jeff, because when I attended the YouTube event, someone had asked, can I turn my live videos into podcasts? And they were like, absolutely. We encourage that you do that. That if you're doing a live video, just create it and make it as a playlist, because so people can know that you have an actual podcast that is being published directly to YouTube. So I would say that there is no discouragement from doing it how you want to do it. But if you want to take the extra steps to clean it up, if you want to do massive editing for your podcast, you want to take it into, I don't know what video platforms people want to use, whether it's Adobe Premiere. I was using ScreenFlow for a long time. It's up to you. You got to find the best workflow for yourself. And I think that is where there is a challenge with a lot of podcasters, is that they're trying to find to identify the best workflow, because there is this discrepancy, this content development discrepancy, where podcasters, they produce they produce the content, but they have no time to promote the content.
Right.
And so it's about finding the right workflow. And I'm not perfect at it. I'm still getting it right for myself, especially since I rebooted back in November, and I've been getting back up on my own feet. And you're dealing with life challenges. I mean, if anyone knows about life challenges, Jeff knows that I've had life challenges within the past 5 months. It's been challenging.
Crazy, yeah.
But I think that every day that you go into this, you have to make small moves every little bit, every single day, to not only produce the content, to develop the content, to create the podcast itself, but also to develop a workflow that will allow you to promote that podcast too.
Yeah, we promote the crap out of this podcast. So if you guys have followed our feed, you know that I use it unashamedly and multiple times, and it works. It works. So, and the thing that has changed everything for me is Descript, being able to take my recording from Ecamm and then go put it to Descript and then edit it as a text document, export it out that way for the clips and everything. It's just, for me, a no-brainer. Got some more great comments from our friends, Gary Stockton. I'm so glad you're back watching with us, Gary. Thank you so much for coming in today. He goes, the Rodecaster Duo is great with Ecamm. You get those individual tracks for guests, which are easy to polish and post before cutting and editing. When Ecamm went to isolated tracks for video and audio, that's when I went out and bought my new Mac Studio, because I needed the Mac Silicone to do that. It makes a huge difference in the quality of repurposing. Our friend Dave Jackson says, amen, Friendster, MySpace, TikTok, be careful making a platform the place to find you. That's why we go everywhere. And I've been doing it, and Dustin pointed out earlier, Shannon's one of the original Google Plus people. We used to hang out together on there. But that's what I've been doing since the Google Plus days, because I'm just lazy and I like having multiple things. Like, I record once and I have so much content that I can pull from a live show. Yeah. It just makes sense for me. A couple, so Deal Billy is here watching as well, saying great show. Billy Thorpe is amazing, a live thing. And then Doc says podcasters are stuck on the word podcast, a made-up word, and the perceived definition of made-up word. The definition is changing, and the OGs are scared because it shows like Called Sir Daddy are winning. So Doc is waiting right in the middle of the controversy about is YouTube a podcast or not. We can debate this until we're blue in the face. People will go one way or another. I see it on Dave's.
Are you familiar with the show Call Her Daddy?
I don't listen to it as much, but you can call me Daddy anytime you want.
Don't lie, Jeff. Don't lie, Jeff. You are.
I don't.
You are. Just,
I do. I know of it, but I am not. I do not subscribe to it. On this note of the video and the importance of video and what we're talking about being on YouTube, I want to know, Shannon, for someone starting brand new, like they've just started a podcast or getting ready to, they went to PodFest. Our friend Rich Watts is watching, and he is getting ready to start a podcast. So should they focus on creating native video podcasts on YouTube, or should they repurpose their audio content into video form? Because a lot of people, you mentioned the camera ready thing, is a big deal for people. I heard a lot of people at PodFest saying, hey, I'm an OG, audio only. I'm going to stay that way. I don't care.
Yeah.
What do you say to those people?
If they're just starting out, start with the thing that is comfortable for you. If you do not like being on camera, that's completely fine, and I completely understand. I mean, look, like half the time when I'm recording my stuff on Ecamm and I'm pre-recording. I don't even do it live. I mean, I do it recorded live, right? But it's not going out to the YouTube feed at all. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I haven't showered for the day, right? So it's like, it's like I haven't showered. I'm wearing a baseball cap. My hair is greasy and I don't care. Now I understand that there is a norm, and and there are, I'm not trying to sound sexist or anything like that. It's just, there's a norm, right? And we understand what that norm is for males and females. And while I would say do what you think is great, but do what you think is comfortable for you. That's what I say you need to do. So let's say you're starting out for the very first time and you just want to do audio and that is really all you want to do. Okay, great. Just do audio, and then maybe all you need to do is create a video that is published and uploaded into YouTube that is some form of a thumbnail that's got captions that are going across the screen that will allow people to read what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the way that you do that. But I would say you have to go with what makes you comfortable, what's going to be best for you, because not every podcast is equally the same. If I were to say that, and if I were to say, it depends on your objective. What is your objective for your podcast? What are you trying to accomplish? Do you want more downloads? Are you trying to increase downloads by 30% between now and the next 6 months? What are you trying to do? And what does that metric look like for you? And so that really has to come down to the identification of what your objective is. So if you want to just start from the very beginning and do audio podcasts and audio only, do audio only. If you want to do a video podcast and you really don't care what you look like every day, that is fine. If I were to put this in context of the YouTube event that I attended, YouTube says all they care about is good content. They care about good content. The length of that content could be anywhere between 15 minutes to 3 hours. And that's what they consider as a podcast. So I hope that kind of answers your question, because it really is a case-by-case situation.
Yeah. I argue for video podcast for the reason that you get so much content and the discoverability that is on YouTube, because that's the biggest issue with podcast, especially if you're starting out at the very beginning. You have no social presence. It's really, really hard, get people to listen to your podcast. So that's why I think it comes down.
And I think it comes down to, I'm not telling anyone to not do a video podcast, but from a workflow standpoint, I would say start with video, because if you're starting with video, then you're able to create all the multiple pieces of content that are chunked down,
right?
All the way down the line, from video to clips to audio to transcripts, to creating those transcripts as to promotional pieces that can go up on Instagram, or you can create them as tweets. And of course, with the emergence of AI in the last couple of years, I mean, a lot of this can be done using the assistant that will still talk in your tone of voice and utilize the transcript itself. So it sounds like it's very, very close to how you sound. I mean, let's be real. AI doesn't do a great job about certain things, but it gets it pretty darn close, especially if you have the AI or the transcript plugged into your AI the right way and have the right prompt. I mean, that I think is what is important.
One of the things too is people who are worried about getting camera ready, whatever. Look at this motley crew. Come on, folks. If we could do a live show, you probably got it made. In fact, somebody at the very beginning said, Andrew said, there's a lot of hair and talent on this show. There's a lot of hair, Andrew, but anyway, yeah. So don't.
And let's be
honest.
I told Jeff, and look, I work nights, and so you can't see them, but I have bags under my eyes. It's difficult. It can be challenging, but that's why I say you have to give yourself some grace too. Give yourself some grace. Allow yourself to be who you are. Going back to that YouTube live event, they did mention one thing that they thought was important. And they said authenticity is the most important thing that you can do for your video podcast. And you can take that many different ways, right? You can say authenticity in what you say, or is it authenticity in how you appear? And I think the more authentic that you can be within the videos, the better it is for you to not only just get the podcast out there, but to display yourself as some form of an authority or entertainer, whatever that may be, however you want to position that. just be authentic. I mean, look at a lot of the look at some of the comedy podcasts. I mean, a lot of them, they're just sitting there. They're very chill, and they don't care at all. And so, I think it's a difficult thing to get over whenever people say like you have to be camera ready, and it's just like, do you really? You don't really have to. It's just maybe that's a standard that you're setting on yourself, and that's what's stressing you out.
Mm-hmm. So I want to bring up this quote that just came in from Gary, and I think it will lead into the question that Shannon's going to ask. He goes, I do a talk show, and when booking a major guest, they don't care about Apple, TuneIn, iTunes, or any app. They want to know how many subscribers you have on YouTube. So that's really interesting to me, is that they're looking for numbers on YouTube when they're booking guests. So I think that's just kind of gives a perfect example of why YouTube is so important for podcasters. Go ahead, Shannon. I mean, go ahead, Connor.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, when it comes to stuff like that, I mean, you can be selective in who you choose to be on your podcast. I get the game. We all get the game that, if you're going to go on to YouTube or you're going to be on a podcast, they want numbers. They want those downloads, right? And I mean, you can say like, hey, I've got 3,000 downloads. And they go, really? And you're like, yeah, total. And they're like, oh yeah, I don't want to be on that program.
Right.
And again, I'm gonna continue to drill this down back hard. Is that what is your podcast's objective? Like, like I talked about when we've been to podcast movement and we have talked to other podcasters. And I say, what are you trying to do? And they go, well, I don't know. I'm just trying to get downloads. And it's like, no, it's got to go deeper than that. It's got to go way deeper than that. And they go, I don't know. And I go, okay, well, let's sit down and let's examine what the future of your podcast is going to look like. What is that monetization? What is that monetization going to look like for you on the back end? And they go, I'm just gonna, I'll just create something into Apple. And, we all know where that can lead at some point in time.
Right.
So, and so we see that. I mean, just like how Dave Jackson had talked about those platforms, they can go away at any point in time. We are still using someone else's app, someone else's software that is allowing us to leverage what we're doing. And so that is why I always try to ask the podcaster, what is your objective? I'm going to tell you right now, I'll even give you the link to it, Jeff, so that you can share it with people. It's the podcast on objectives. It's like, that is the one that I think people don't listen to the most because they don't want to face what they have to do in the beginning before they take the podcast to the next level. You have to focus on the objective. Where do you want to go? What is the website platform that you want to use? Are you going to be utilizing marketing platforms like email? Are you going to be utilizing platforms like newsletters? How are you going to be doing that? Are you going to be selling products? Are you going to be selling courses? What does that look like? And how is that going to look like? And then once you start, uncovering these layers for podcasters, it can become overwhelming. But the cool thing about podcasting is that you don't have to eat the elephant all in one bite. You can take it step by step by step and just figuring out your objectives. And I mean, I think it's safe to say, Jeff, that we understand that you have a couple different objectives. I mean, we know that when you are promoting Ecamm, you've got some type of sponsorship that is lined behind that, but you also have a newsletter. Yeah. See, there you go. I like how I weaved that in there, but you also have something where you push people to a newsletter as well to connect with them. And I think that is a challenge. That is a true challenge by podcasters because you and I are old school. I mean, if we want to go OG like Dave Jackson, you're talking about, he's been talking about this for years, right? But it has to be reiterated. It has to be delivered in, through different people to say like, this is what you should be focusing on. Are you focusing more on the downloads? Are you focusing more on the back end? What does that look like for you?
Mm-hmm. I think back in the day when we were just focusing on audio, it was relatively easy, right? You record it, you come up with a title you think is attention grabbing, you add in some show notes and some descriptions, and you post it and it goes out there. And the marketing of it was very, very, very difficult. Now, I think the myth is we transition to video podcasts, right? We still have that audio function, but when we're posting the YouTube, great, I'm going to have a video component posted to YouTube, and then YouTube is going to feed me all of these wonderful new viewers and listeners, and my life is going to be complete, right? No, you still have to build towards that. So now, all of a sudden, podcasters have to deal with metadata, have to deal with thumbnails, have to deal with SEO for YouTube in particular, and it can be a lot. So Shannon, what do you think are some of the biggest mistakes that podcasters are making when it comes to optimizing for search on the YouTube platform in general?
Yeah, well, I would say the biggest mistake is they just publish and run.
Yeah.
Like that is their thing. They just publish and run, and they don't take the time to fill out the fields that are inside of YouTube. And the fields are going to be the fields that you have to fill out inside of YouTube. They are the muscle. I wouldn't say they're the muscle, but they are some of the muscle that is going to get that podcast delivered and in front of the eyes of people who are looking for the information that you are sharing. And so, what I would say to someone who's looking to publish onto podcasts, or I'm sorry, onto YouTube podcasts, is that you need to focus on these areas for YouTube podcasts. You need to focus on the title. You need to focus on a high quality, and engaging thumbnail for your podcast. You need to focus on the description. And if I were to take information from the YouTube event that I attended, they say the description and leverage how you can put links inside of the description. Again, it comes back down to the objective. What is your objective? If you can leverage using links inside of your description, that can typically lead them to where you want them to go. So we talk about titles, thumbnails, descriptions, links, and then we are talking about things like end screens. Where are you trying to push them to next? Utilizing the cards. Typically on YouTube videos, you can see that there are cards that pop up and say, like, the YouTuber will say, like, hey, if you're interested in watching that video, click up here, and it'll allow you to check out that next video. But those cards are super valuable too, because if you're talking about something inside of your podcast, you can direct them there. So a lot of it is about this metadata that is built in directly to YouTube, right? And this metadata gives you the opportunity to be in front of people, but it also gives you the opportunity to analyze, go into your analytics, and see where people are falling off on your podcast. Maybe they don't listen to the whole podcast, or maybe you're seeing dips in the podcast, and you can see those in actual graphs on YouTube where people are falling off, and you're like, I'm not listening to this. I'm quitting that. And that allows you to create better content. And I'll be the first one to tell you that going back into republishing my own podcast and rebooting everything, I had this grand idea of like, oh, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it like a radio program. It's going to be,
right,
commercials, all that stuff. And then you go and you look in your analytics, and then it's like, womp womp, you're just like, wow, the analytics on that aren't really that great. So you got to go back in and reconfigure how you're creating the podcast, right? And so podcasting and radio are two completely different entities in terms of how the delivery is, but because we have a different delivery system inside of YouTube, how we consume that content, we're typically looking for that hook. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of this podcast, and Jeff starts it out with a question, have you ever thought about starting a podcast on YouTube? He starts with a hook, and that's typically what YouTube videos are all about. So I try to now start, the last couple episodes, I've really been trying to start out with a hook. But getting back to your question, Connor, it's all that metadata. It's the things that podcasters are not doing on YouTube is they're not filling out those fields. They're just publishing and running. And that's a huge, huge thing that they need to go back and rethink. All right. Utilizing the captions that you can upload into YouTube are search optimized. So when you upload those captions and you get that SRT file or that TXT file, upload those into YouTube, so that allows the YouTube search engine to go ahead and put that in front of the eyes that are looking for your podcast.
So I have a question about that real quick, because is it better to I know YouTube will generate its own titles. I mean, their own captions, and they're pretty bad. Is that why you upload your own? Because you want to make sure they're 100% correct?
I want to make sure they should be 100% correct, right? But I think with the tools that we have now that are available, with the AI that we have now, I want them more correct, because it would allow probably for a better search discovery. That's my opinion. I wouldn't say that that's an industry standard. I would say that's what I do. You can pull those from Descript, obviously. Although I have found another tool called TurboScribe, and I've been utilizing it, and the transcriptions are, I feel, a lot better than a Descript is what I feel.
Okay.
That, so I would say that if you're going to jump into something like that and you want to add TurboScribe into, your mix or your workflow mix,
Right.
you can do that. But I would say the Descript transcripts they will do just fine. I have just found a little more, I don't know if it's success, in terms of delivery of my podcast or my YouTube podcast to someone else, but I typically like getting those transcripts. And, when you subscribe to a TurboScribe account, it's unlimited transcriptions. So I utilize it not only for the transcripts of my podcast, but I flesh out ideas. I flesh out the ideas, and then I do them all in audio. I upload them in the transcript or into TurboScribe, and I get a transcript, and it will create summaries for me. It has ChatGPT prompts to create the summaries for me, and that to me is valuable in the iteration processes of building out my podcasts.
Yeah.
You mentioned a follow-up
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
More around metadata and stuff. You mentioned TurboScribe, Shannon, but do you use other tools like maybe a TubeBuddy or a vidIQ or ChatGPT Descript to help you formulate those titles, those captions, the metadata, the tags? Do you have tools that help you with all that?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because I did mean to mention that, Connor. Yeah, I am a subscriber of TubeBuddy. I love TubeBuddy, but if you want to use vidIQ, I would say you probably would see the same success, but the success really lies in the philosophy of how you're utilizing that tool. And you must utilize that tool because it's not only going to help you optimize the metadata inside of your descriptions or your YouTube video, but it's going to save you a lot of time because there are a lot of steps that you have to take when you're uploading a video to YouTube. For instance, when we talk about metadata, another key piece of metadata are timestamps, and timestamps are a huge thing. And while I had felt at the time that timestamps would be a disservice to my podcast because I thought it would be giving the viewer the ability to skip directly to where they needed to go. And then just, they're watching and then they're dropping off. YouTube says, no, this is a really good idea because for that very reason, they're going to where they need to go and they listen. It gives more viewers the opportunity to see where they need to listen, and it increases view and watch time on your channel. And I thought that seems counterproductive, but that's at least how I had interpreted it. And I thought to myself, oh, that's interesting. So I just started incorporating, I've always incorporated timestamps, but being able to use the tool in TubeBuddy, and when you're going in and you're finding those moments of your timestamping, you are, I listen to it at 2x speed, and my podcasts have shortened down quite a bit. They don't even go for an hour. They're doing about 30 to 40 minutes, and I can listen at 2x speed, and I can utilize the tool in TubeBuddy, and in conjunction with the notes that I have written down so that I can write down the title of what that section is about, it just goes by super fast. I can get those done for a 30 to 40 minute podcast. I could probably get it done in about 15 minutes.
Wow. So I want to go back to something you said earlier about looking at those graphs and data. And we've talked about the new YouTuber and podcaster. Those are hard to do, especially when you're starting and you're seeing like, oh, people jumped off when I said my name. They must hate my name. I got to change my name. And to be honest, one time I was on Dave Jackson's show, and he asked permission, but he showed, like, he edited a video interview that I was on. He's like, oh, Jeff he already said that. I'm going to cut that. And it was really humbling to watch, like, your performance getting axed. And it's the same way when you're going through your own conversations going, oh, I could really do a better job, like making this faster or asking this quicker or whatever. And editing your own project at first helps you do that. And I'm going to pull up a comment from Dave. He goes, if you don't get your why, you burn out. And if you don't educate or entertain, you don't grow your audience. And going back and looking at those stats and graphics and seeing where you can improve may be hard to do and maybe hard to listen to yourself. But that's how you grow, because if you find out why you're not educating people or entertaining people, then you need to improve that, and then you can maybe grow your audience. But anyway, thanks for that, Dave, and for raking me over the coals.
Let me tell you something. I'll keep it real quick, but let me grab this real quick because I just put these away. When I talk about doing show notes, and I talk about doing anything that has to deal with time stamping, like these are all my notes that I'm writing. I'm writing all these notes down, and these are from previous shows. And these are really great for helping me whenever I'm publishing. I mean, simply just I've titled them out. I've created headers of what each section is about. So when I go in and I do that, the pre-editing or the editing that I'm doing is a lot of pre-editing. So I don't have to focus on the edit on the back end, if that makes sense. I don't have to focus on editing on the back end. When you do something, you get humbled by someone, they just cut that out, right? Then you go, oh gosh, so how can you become a better presenter? Well, be a better presenter by preparing, right? Prepare a little bit better. And then that can really cut the curve down in terms of how you are publishing your podcast. Because I'm not going to lie. I mean, and I'm not trying to say this to discourage anyone to do a podcast on YouTube. I'm just going to tell them that, yes, in the beginning, it seems very, very cumbersome. But once you learn the process of filling out your metadata, and let's just even take it back a step further. Once you figure out the process of recording your podcast based on how you're going to have to upload it, then it becomes a lot easier. And then you go, oh, well, I'm going to have to do all of this inside of YouTube. So I might as well incorporate it inside of how I present my podcast so that I can create shareable clips within my podcast. I mean, I know you do a really great job of doing that yourself when we see your stuff, Jeff, because you create these shareable clips inside of the script, and then you're distributing them everywhere. So you're thinking ahead, and I think that's where podcasters must think, is that they have to think ahead. This concept is no different than how we do it in radio. We've done this in radio for many, many years. So when you're seeing podcasters do something similar, you're like, oh, well, they're just taking an idea from radio, but it's not an idea from radio. It's an idea about being smart, working smarter, not harder. That's all it is.
Yeah. And Gary has a great quote, says 100% preparation is so important, right down to even the selection of the guest. Yes, I do. We do a lot of, it may not look it, but we do a lot of prep for this show. And in fact, I talked about it at Podfest about how we come up with questions and interview and all that kind of stuff. So it is a lot of work, but it is a labor of love, as I know a lot of you creators here, like Chris Stone, Doc Rock, Gary Anderson, have that passion for this. But you know what? We are out of time. We didn't get to half of what I want to talk about. So we will definitely have Shannon back for part 2, because I know you had some great questions. We wouldn't be able to do the show without our folks over at Ecamm. You can find out more about them at ecamm.com/Jeff. Save 15% on your first purchase by using code Jeff15. Doc is also part of Ecamm's group. He's in the chat. If you have any questions about Ecamm, he would be more than willing to help you out with that. But it is a great community, a great group of people. But Shannon Hernandez, you got some cool stuff going on. I want to give people a chance to connect with you. Tell them about your services, all of your things. I know you have got a great new little newsletter you're putting together at thepodcasttherapist.com/amplify. So I want you guys to all go check that out. But Shannon, I'll let you talk. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So this is something new that I've gone ahead and I'm developing and building it out right now. It's going to be a newsletter, and it's really more of a chance for me to not just connect with podcasters, but it is my ability. It's my purpose really is to help, right? It's to help and share not only valuable tips, but also share insight from my 25 years in radio and how a lot of these strategies, a lot of how what you're doing with your podcast, how they all fit together through utilizing, promotional marketing techniques. And so that's what going to my newsletter is all about. It's called Frequency Amplified. And it's obviously a play on some radio stuff, but it really applies to podcasters too. And so I'm really going to connect with them, share these stories out. And in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be launching that. And I'm going to be sharing at least one newsletter to them a week, and then hopefully ramp that up to 2. So I encourage you to go over to thepodcasttherapist.com/amplify. And it's just a landing page, and you just go sign up right there, and you'll start getting those newsletters whenever I start publishing them. So I'm looking forward to actually writing, because I was a former teacher. I love to write. I love to that's what I love to do as well. I mean, I love to podcast as well, but hopefully get on the newsletter.
So that's the podcasttherapist.com/amplify. So make sure you guys check that out, because as Chris Stone has said, Shanman is the man. His shows are chock full of valuable stuff for podcasters of all levels. Outstanding. And if Chris Stone says it, it is true. So
it's gospel.
That's
it's gospel.
Right. Connor Brown It is 80 degrees here in Texas, but it's not going to stay that way. It's going to be cold. I'm going to want to take a trip. Tell me what I need to do to find out the best vacation planning services on the planet.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless you're Doc Rock in Hawaii, you're probably in someplace cold right now. If you want to escape, come someplace warm, you can reach out to me at Connor, CONOR, at vacationkingdoms.com. I can help you book a trip to somewhere warmer, theme parks, cruises, all-inclusives. I'd love to help you out. Fantastic show. It's always great having Shannon on the airwaves here.
Yes, and for all you podcasters out there, you guys are doing a great job. I know there's a lot of people in the comments watching us live who are content creators. It is hard work, but you guys are appreciative. I'm appreciative of you. Thank you guys for all of your support. Thank you guys for watching today. And ask us any questions. I know Shannon will be in the comments as well, but wherever you're watching, make sure you just ask those questions, and we'll try to get back to you with that. We thank you guys. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.